funding. Sources of grant funding, researching potential funders, funders' criteria and priorities, making a case for support, monitoring, reporting and measuring impact, and building relationships with funders as well, along with common reasons why applications fail and the top reasons why applications succeed. So, as I said, this session will take about 30 minutes and then there'll be time at the end for questions. So the main sources of grant funding are central government, local authority. Government funding is the second largest income source for the voluntary sector across the country, behind public donations, but this has significantly declined in recent years. And we're well beyond the days now where organisations can look to receive significant contributions from local authorities and central government, unfortunately. Nationally, the vast majority of government funding goes to larger organisations in social services sectors, largely in the form of contracts. The next main source is charitable and corporate trusts. There's over 8,000 charitable grant-making trusts in the country, which give out £4.9 billion annually to charitable organisations. And giving by the top 50 foundations reached 230 million in 2019, and this is steadily increased year on year. The National Lottery remains a key funder, particularly for new and small charitable organisations. And since 1994, 46 billion has been given out for good causes, and around 670,000 projects have been funded through lottery funds. And the lottery distributes their funds through a number of sources, including the National Lottery Community Fund, Sport England, National Lottery Heritage Fund, Arts Council of England, and the British Film Institute. So around the country, there's a network of community foundations, and Dorset Community Foundation is our local one, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. They distribute funding on behalf of other charitable trusts and also corporate bodies. And they also publish information on other local grant funders and small local family charitable trusts. Local charitable trusts, Dorset Community Foundation have a really useful web section on their website, which lists all the very small family charitable trusts based in Dorset. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that, but do bear in mind they're very, very small charitable trusts, a lot of them giving out just very small grants to local organisations where they feel that will make a difference. There are a number of Dorset-based charitable trusts, organisations like Talbot Village Trust, Alice Ellen Cooper-Dean, the Valentine Charitable Trust, and Hall and Woodhouse. These are all based in our local area, and they favour local organisations with funding as well. So moving on to researching funders. iDocs, or Open for Community, is a really, really useful grant search engine. We're fortunate in Dorset that in the BCP area, BCP Council fund this on a subscription basis for local organisations, and Dorset Council do for the Dorset area. So this means this information is free for you to access if your organisation has a turnover of under £1 million. So through that grant search engine, you can search parameters, things like looking at funding relevant for your type of organisation, the focus of your work, your regional area, and you can get a breakdown of a wide range of different grant sources. You will likely find if you're new to iDocs, you can get bombarded with search results on there, but there's different ways of filtering the information. And we do have a session coming up looking particularly at iDocs and how to best use that. So information about that is on the CAM website under our training section. So another way to find out really useful information about funders is through the 360 Degree Giving website. This website lists all the different funders, all the different charitable trusts, where they actually gave their funding out to and the amounts that they gave out. So that, alongside the Open for Community information, gives a really useful guide to the level of grants organisations are giving out and the type of work that they're funding. So alongside that, a lot of funders do have their own websites, which I'd encourage you to look at. Those websites will outline what their funding priorities are and their criterias, if they've got any particular programs running, and how their application process works. And a lot of organisations, and plus the Open4 community, organises funding newsletters. BCP Council have a funding newsletter locally called What's Funds that you can subscribe to, and different funders often have that as well. So, and different organisations such as Get Grants, and there are different ones out there that you can subscribe to, and then you'll receive grant bulletins from them, and they will highlight things like forthcoming deadlines, if new programs have been launched, that kind of thing. And funder annual reports are a very useful source of information. If a funder doesn't have a website, then what you can do is you can go onto the Charity Commission website and you can search up the name of the charitable trust. Then if you go into their listing, it will give an overview of that organisation, and you can download their annual accounts on there, which will give a good overview of what grants they give out and what their priorities are. And also there'll be kind of annual report information within that as well. Alongside the annual accounts, a lot of the funders do give out annual reports as well. So sometimes those can be linked through the website and also on their newsletters that they send out. Some funders do offer the opportunity for you to make contact with them and make direct inquiries or have a pre-application discussion. And if that is available to you, I'd always recommend you do that, because that's often part of the process with funders, of how it kind of introduces them to your organisation, and it can be an initial sifting process. But obviously not all funders are able to provide that because of the resources required. So moving on to writing a strong grant application, which are the fundamental principles. So as I just mentioned, it's really important for you to review funders' criteria, and you can do that through iDocs, through their websites, and through the other research information you find out about the charitable trust or the funder. It's really important that you have a clear idea of what your organisation wants to do and how you fit with that, and not to try to shoehorn your work into a funder's criteria, or to just chase funds for the sake of it, because that does often show up, and it can also be detrimental to your organisation, because it can mean that you're chasing after funds and you can get muddled with the mission of the work that you're wanting to do, or it can detract from your core purpose. So it's important to look at what information the funder has requested and how they would like the information presented. So some funders have an application form, or others will ask for a 2 or 3 page proposal or longer document. Some will ask for a covering letter, and some will give a specific page or word count for that information, and particularly if it's an application form. So with those, it's really important to look at what information they're asking you for. The vast majority of funders will ask you to explain what your organisation is, what work you concentrate on and what you want to do, what you need the funding for, what the needs are of your local community, and what difference the funding will make, along with things like how you will monitor and report progress on your work and how you will measure the impact. So that's kind of broadly what most funders look for, whether that's in an application form or a proposal. So it's important to look at what their deadline is for submission. Some funders don't have deadlines, but they'll meet on a quarterly or 6 monthly basis to review any applications that come in, whereas others will have specific deadline periods that you'll need to stick to. So it's important that you take note of that when you're submitting your application, and you submit it in a timely manner for that consideration. And also to be aware of whether your time frame fits. the vast majority of funders won't fund work that has started before they've given you a decision on your application. So be very mindful of that. And I know in a recent lottery workshop we had, the lottery officer mentioned that a lot of awards for all applications is turned down at the very first phase because it says on the application that they're due to start the work before they will have received a notification about their application decision. So you can often think, oh, well, funders might be flexible with that, and you can be flexible with that, but it's important that you take that into account. So this is an obvious one, but often it is something that people can get wrong, and it's answer the questions that they're asking. People sometimes get very focused and very passionate about what they're doing and want to get that across within the application form, but they end up not actually specifically answering the question that the funder has asked. So be mindful of that when you're providing the information. Another good tip is to use the terminology that the funders use, the wording that they use in their criteria for what their priorities are. So if their priorities are things like they're mentioning words like social isolation, intergenerational working, those kind of terms, then, and if your work fits within that, then make sure that you're using that kind of same terminology as well. And be concise and explicit within your application, and try not to waffle. But and it's important to read and check your information. A key thing is to make sure that there's no typos is often, a key thing, but also make sure that your budget tallies, that your sums add up with any budget that you've included, and that your budget matches the description of the work that you've said you're going to do within your application, because that can be quite a common error that people make in their application. Again, within your application, make sure that you give a senior person contact and a signature if required for the application. Some funders will require a chair or a chief executive of an organisation to have actually completed the application form or signed the covering letter, but others won't be that specific. But so just make sure that you're following their protocol there. And that you're supplying all these supporting information that they request as well. Some funders will ask for things like annual reports, annual accounts, a list of who your trustees are, that kind of thing. So make sure if they've requested that information that you're providing it to them. So making a case for support, this is obviously the key area with grant applications, and how you make your case stand out. Because if you're going to national funders, you're against national competition there with a wide range of organisations, many of whom might be doing similar work to you. So it's important that you clearly distinguish what you're doing and make your work stand out, and that you're very clear in what a difference their funding will make to you. So a key foundation for this is evidence and data, is being able to communicate how you know your product or service is needed. And linked to that, it's really important to be able to communicate what the needs are with your local community and your beneficiaries. So looking at things like the indices of multiple deprivation, NHS issue a great deal of statistics if your work is related to health and well-being. Equally, the Police and Crime Commission and Dorset Police have a lot of information there on crime statistics if that is linked to your work as well. And there are lots of different official bodies and academic institutions and other campaigning organisations that pull together different data that you can use to support your case. Alongside that, it's important that you're carrying out research and consultation with your beneficiaries, and that you know what their needs are, and that you can communicate that. Funders want to see that you've engaged with your beneficiaries, that you understand what their needs are, and that your work is tailored to meet those needs. So Often organisations are doing a lot of research and consultation and getting feedback from their users, but they're not necessarily always realising the value of that and capturing it in the right way. So it's important, if you do feedback sessions, surveys, that kind of thing, that you're collating that data and keeping records of that so that you can use them to support your funding bids. And often funders like to see things like peer support groups, user groups set up that you go to regularly, that you consult with about your work and your future planning. So with your case for support, it's important that you have planned your project or service and that you can clearly communicate what you want to do and why you want to do it. A lot of funders will just fund over a certain time period, whether that's 1 year, or some funders will do multiple year agreements. And it's important that you have a timeline for what you want to do and that you've got a clear project management plan. A key part of your case for support is your track record as well. So it's an opportunity for you to communicate your experience and your impact and why you're the most appropriate organisation to deliver the work that you want to, and why you're in the best position to do that. It's also an opportunity to explain, if you're working in partnership with other organisations, how that works in practice and what work you've undertaken to date. Your budget and fundraising target is a key part of your case. And just make sure that that's properly scoped out. Funders like to see accurate figures rather than ballpark figures. And if it's for things like capital works, they like to see that you've got a detailed budget in place there and tender documents, that kind of thing. Or services, if you know it, and you're considering things like on cost. So if it's for a salary, you've also included things like the NI and PAYE costings, that kind of thing. The time frame for your project is important as well. That it's important to show that it's realistic and is achievable, and going back to the funder's deadline, to make sure that it fits within their deadline. So if the funder is saying that your work will need to be completed within 12-month period for this grant, it's important that you clearly show that that's what you're working to. And a key thing is to don't assume the funder knows your work or the needs of your beneficiaries. It's important that you're explicit about what you want to do, what your organisation does, how you do it, and how your work helps your community and beneficiaries. A lot of funders have a lot of applications and they don't have time to go away and do additional research. So it's always best to assume that the only information they will have about your organisation is what you're giving them on paper and in your application. So monitoring and reporting is a key element for funders, and the majority of them will request or expect an end of grant report from you. Some will give guidance on this within their grant information, or they'll have a specific reporting form that you'll need to complete, but others won't. So it's important that you check this out at the time of application, that you factor this into your project and also your budget if needed. I know some funders, like the lottery, really value the reporting and the impact measurement that comes from projects, and they will allow you to include an element of funding within your application to cover those costs. And because that information could be very, very helpful to you to secure other funds in the future as well. So it's important that you capture the key data through your project that you can then use for your annual reports, your newsletters, and your impact reporting. And funders like to know that the grant that they've given has helped to strengthen your organisation, and it will enable you to carry on your work and secure funds from other sources as well. So with that, it's important to look at outputs, which are the goods, the products, or the services that you deliver, and the outcomes, which are the changes that come about as a result of your work. So there's often some confusion over these terms, and it's important. We have a session actually on this coming up in December, which is going to be run with Kirsty Main, who's the local lottery officer, because this is a priority or area for the lottery. So they're very keen to help organisations understand, as a funder, what kind of information they like to see coming forward as part of their grant funded work. So alongside that, it's important for you to consider things like indicators, which are specific measurable pieces of information that you can collect to keep track of the difference your work is making. And that can include things like quantitative and qualitative data. So it's the hard data, the things like the numbers. So the numbers of participants, the number of people you're working with, number of people that have engaged with a particular piece of work, alongside the qualitative data, which is the sometimes described as the soft data. So it's kind of case studies, people's feedback. You can use things like outcome stars that measure an impact a project or piece of work has had on an individual. So it's very important to look at fundraising in terms of building relationships. I've put a link on here on the slide that you'll be shared with later on to the Code of Fundraising Practice, which is a very useful guide and set of principles that we always recommend people follow with their fundraising. But it's important that, because a lot of funders will repeat fund the same organisation, and they like to develop a relationship over a period of time, whether that's individual supporters or grant funding organisations. So it's a very useful way for you to kind of keep on building that relationship into the future that can strengthen and grow. So it's important that you tailor your approach to different funders and audiences. You know, don't take a blanket approach and don't just send out the same application to lots of different funders at the same time without individually tailoring those applications, whether that's just in the form of a covering letter where you specifically mention the contact for the organisation and what the criteria is for that organisation, or how you reference that within your application. So it's important to maintain communication with funders. So to continue to send them information and reports, your annual reports, trying and get them to engage with your website and different media updates. So the same as promotion, basically. So it's important to kind of engage them through that process. Some funders will like you to include their logos and acknowledge their contribution in press, on your social media, websites and newsletters. So it's very important, if that's specified by the funder, that you follow that, because they do look up that kind of information. And it's always a good move to invite your funders and supporters to any events or activities, as this is appropriate. Obviously, if they're a national funding organisation, they may not have the capacity to do that, but often local funders will. So looking at common reasons why applications fail, the most common one is that the application and the piece of work didn't match the funder's criteria or their charitable objectives, or the application was missing key information, the amount requested wasn't appropriate. In some cases, a funder will come back to you and say, oh, this is too much of a grant ask. We might be able to offer you a lower amount, but it's important that you use things like IDOCS and 360-degree giving alongside the funder's annual accounts to look at the level of grants that they're giving out already and make sure your ask fits within those parameters. So the time frame falls out of the funder's timescale or the deadline missed, as I've already mentioned. Due diligence checks on an organisation or issues with a track record can be a reason why an application might fail. It's important, if you're a registered charity and you're submitting your annual reports to the Charity Commission, please do try to keep that on time. It's a big red flag when you look on an organisation's record and it says accounts date missed. And sometimes that can happen over multiple years, and funders do look at that information. So competition for funds is probably a key reason why applications fail as well, because so many funders receive so many applications and it is very competitive nationally now. So the top reasons why applications would succeed, that there was a clear match with the funders' objectives and criteria. There was a clearly demonstrated need for the work or the project or the cause, which comes down to evidence and the consultation information that you're able to provide. The organisation was able to communicate that they're well managed and competent and that they have a strong track record. The right level of grant ask was submitted and an appropriate timescale, so that fitted within the funders' parameters. And the organisation demonstrated the funding would make a significant difference. Often funders would like to feel that they're the ones that have made the real difference between a piece of work going forward or not. So it's important that you can kind of communicate that through the size of the budget, the proportion of the work that their work will support. And also that the application was part of a coherent fundraising strategy. So if they weren't the sole funder, that their bid fitted, their grant contribution fitted well within your funding strategy. And also that it was deliverable work with a significant impact for your community or beneficiaries. So moving on to what Support can give you in terms of your fundraising. We have an online fundraising toolkit, which I'll show you shortly. And we do have a session coming up on that as well, where I'll go through all the detail of the toolkit, but it is accessible to all CAN members. Membership is free to CAN if you're not already a member, and you receive as particular login details, and you can go to the member zone and the fundraising toolkit is in there. There's a lot of information in there, links to best practice and guidance. CAN also organises Meet the Funder sessions. We've got one coming up next month with Talbot Village Trust, and we've had a recent one with Dorset Council, Dorset Community Foundation, and we have national funders take part in those as well. So they're an opportunity for you to hear firsthand about different funder priorities and ask questions to the local representative as well. We do different training and webinars. This is one of a series of fundraising ones, and we have other ones scheduled in and more planned for next year. If you're a CAN member in Dorset or BCP, you can also access some one-to-one support through myself and my colleague Becky, who covers the Dorset area. We can work with you to look at different income streams, sources of grant funding, and developing a fundraising strategy, writing your applications, and also reviewing any draft applications that you're putting together. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen now, and then I'm going to take you onto the fundraising toolkit. So I'm hoping that works okay. Sorry, it won't be a second. I'm hoping you can all see this okay. Bethan, can you let me know if not? So this is the main page from the website. Within the Empower section, under Raising Money and Fundraising Toolkit. So there's some general information here. Then you can click on a link into the toolkit, and this will take you to the different sections. So there's sections about grants, individual donations, community fundraising, crowdfunding, contracts, trading, corporate support. There's a section on building a case for support, evidence and data and monitoring. And so within each of these windows, there's lots of information and links here. So within the case for support, there's some guidance on knowing your beneficiaries, engaging your beneficiaries, and that kind of work, that kind of information. I just wanted to show you as well, within the evidence and data section, there are some links here to sources of information that you can gather statistics through. So things like the indices of multiple deprivation, And local authorities pull out different data from various different sources, including the IMD, and they often put together area profiles. So if you're working in a specific area within Dorset that has particular needs, it's useful if you can pull out that statistical data. So there are links here which will take you to those websites and those profiles. And there are some links here as well to Dorset Police, NHS, and different health statistics as well, which hopefully will be helpful to you. So all of this information is within the toolkit. As I mentioned, we have got a session coming up looking at the toolkit in detail and kind of what information is there. Within the grant section, which obviously we're focusing on today, there's links here to different helpful sources of information, as well as the iDocs grant search engines here. So, and you can, if you're not already joined on there, you can just set up a free account. So it's very easy to register online. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. So did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask? Everybody fallen asleep under their blankets in the cold.
No, we're here. We're not asleep. My name is Adam, and my question is how to register with CAN? Do you have a website that we can go on and just fill the and register on there?
Yes, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. And we have a membership officer as well who can contact you, and they can tell you a bit more about the different services CAN offers. But yeah, if you, Bethan's going to send around an email after today's session, and there'll be a link to there on our website, so you can just go on there and get all the detail you need.
All right. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
While everyone's thinking, I'll just pop a link to a really short survey in the chat, just about the information in today's session. Maybe while you're pondering over what we've learned today, you could quickly click on the link in the chat and fill those. Oh, we've got a hand up from Liz. Oh.
Hi there, thanks for that, Louise. That was really helpful. So I just wondered, we're in a situation where we're a newly registered charity, but we've been going for 10 years. So we've got lots of, audited accounts from previous times, but we're having quite a lot of people turning our applications down because we don't have any entry on the Charities Commission site, obviously, because they won't accept anything until the first year. So do you have any advice about how we can manage that?
I would highlight that in your application. It's quite a common thing, and a lot of registered charities are transferring to CIOs now as well. So, and they're having the same thing where their record gets wiped out and they're kind of starting from a blank sheet. But yeah, if you make that explicit within your application, generally they'll ask you for the date that you were established, or when your organisation was constituted. So there's usually some kind of, if it's a free text application where they just ask you to submit 2 to 3 pages of information, you can highlight it there. But otherwise, there's usually somewhere where you can squeeze it in the application text somewhere. But yeah, if you've got an opportunity to give any other attachments, so if you have an annual report or you've got a summary of the work that you've done up until that stage that you can attach as a PDF, it's always useful to do that as well. So yeah, it's quite a common thing. And I think it's funders don't necessarily turn down an application just on that basis if they know that you've been established for a long time. So, it's important that you communicate that and what your track record is up until that date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rajni, the hand up.
Hi, sorry. I'm Rajni from the Inara project. I was wondering if so we are technically a Muslim charity, so we run on Islamic values, which means we don't accept national lottery funding. is there any way, it's probably worth it having a one-to-one conversation with someone, but to kind of tailor a fundraising kind of toolkit for those who can't accept national lottery funding due to religious reasons, because almost everything is from national lottery funding, unfortunately. Even when we look at funding from third-party organisations, they get their funding from the national lottery, so it's really hard for us to find the right funding.
Well, if you look on the IDOC's website, the vast majority of charitable trusts on there are independent organisations.
Okay.
So they're not associated with the lottery at all. It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? I know. And I think more and more these days, so many more stories are becoming public about where charitable trusts have historically got their funding from as well. So it's quite a tricky field to kind of navigate, I think, as an organisation, and particularly if you have strong principles with it. So, but yeah, if you have a look on IDOCS, the national lottery is a very, very small percent of the organisations that are represented on there. So, you know, the vast majority of charitable trusts, it's one thing to bear in mind is some trusts won't fund a religious organisation, whatever religion it is, and that will be explicit in their criteria. Whereas others will support particular religious causes. So you can actually put in keywords, you know, like your religion keyword within that section and search up, and it might highlight those kind of funders. I know there's quite a few charitable trusts that support Jewish organisations and Christian organisations. So yeah, it's a question of doing your research, but IDOCS is a really useful source of information for that. And as I said, the lottery is probably a very, very small proportion of that, the listings there.
Thank you. And one more thing, and I'm so sorry if you've already answered this. It's been quite a hectic morning. Do you have to be a registered charity to be a CAN member?
No, you don't. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, okay, lovely.
Yeah, all of the information is online. So yeah, different charitable, different all community groups and community associations can join as members.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That makes so much sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw a question pop up in the chat. Let me just have a look.
Yeah, there was a question about the recording, but
oh right, oh fine, okay. Good. That's my multitasking skills for you. Were there any more questions this morning? If not, then my email is on the slides that will be sent around. So please feel free to get in touch with me or my colleague Becky that covers the Dorset area. And as I said, we can both give you some one-to-one support. That's just for CAN members, though, the one-to-one support. But if it's a general question, then, you know, I'd be happy to help. And yeah, so if there's anything else, then please do get in touch with us. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And please do fill in the feedback survey if you wouldn't mind, if you've just got a couple of minutes, because as with all organisations, we also have to submit different grant applications and things. So the data is very useful to us, and it also means that we can make sure that the information we're giving out and the sessions we're doing are useful to people as well. So thank you very much for your time today, and stay warm and dry out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.